If you remember one thing tonight about the Living Building Challenge, remember the metaphor. Remember a building like a flower. That's how we want to think about every building that we design. It's rooted in one place. It gets all its energy and all its water from its direct surroundings. It doesn't create any waste. When it's done, its life, it just goes, the nutrients go back into the ground. That's how challenging this Living Building Challenge actually is. And then of course the final point is they've got to be beautiful, or no one's gonna want one, no one's gonna live in one. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about some of the things that we're going to see today. Here, it's based on measured results. You don't get your rating in the Living Building Challenge until a year after your building's been open, and you actually measure all of the wonderful things that you said you were going to do. The Transect concept is kind of neat. It basically starts in the natural wilderness, and then it kind of moves through progressively into more denser forms of urbanism, right into like a downtown Los Angeles or New York or Toronto. But basically it's showing the 4 types across there, the neighborhood building. On the left-hand side, it's divided into petals. There are 7 petals in the Living Building Challenge rating system. And within those, there are 20 imperatives, which are kind of equivalent to the lead points. I'm going to go through all of them again in record time. So the first petal is sight. It's usually the big one. Most of our competition dealt with sight because there's some of the big challenges. Right off the bat, number 1, limits to growth. You don't build on a site that hasn't been built on already. End of story. When you plant it, forget your lawns. Lawns not natural. What you put back on your property that isn't building has to mimic the pre-development natural landscape. So depending on the size of your lot and the size of your building, and a rule called the Fbr Rule, you have to provide a place for growing food. So as the buildings get bigger, slowly the property or the amount of black square drops down. If you're a living building and let's say the hospital goes in and they've got 16 acres and they want to be to living building standards, they have to either develop on only half their land, covenant the other half, or they have to find 16 acres somewhere else and give that over to the land trust. So okay, still the last one in sight, car-free living. Only 20 of those units could be of one type. So if you had 20 housing units, you'd have to do 20 other mixed use, commercial, recreation. The goal is to try to get everything more walkable so that the places you go have a better chance of occurring where you live. Okay, we're going to go on to the water pedal. You want to talk about a challenge, try doing this in Phoenix. You don't hook up to the water system. You don't connect to the city water system. If you don't have a lot of rain, you're allowed to fill up your system one time. Your toilets, your sinks, everything has to be treated on site, recirculated, reused.
Wow.
Water flow, you can't disturb what's happening on your site. If it's been raining on that site for thousands of years and that's been flowing in the ground and it's been going into that stream and feeding those salmon over there, if you come in and cut that off, you're in violation of that. So you have to find a way to get all your water back into the ground and back into that water cycle system. So that's no easy solution. Only one, now we're going into the third pedal, energy. Only one imperative, net zero energy, no fossil fuel burning. And you have to produce more energy than your building consumes at the end of the year. You can hook up to the grid, but at the end, after your 1 year, you have to show that you've actually produced more energy than you've consumed. Health, just trying to create healthy environments, healthy air, lots of filtration, lots of screens at the doors, no smoking. Halfway through, biophilia. Anyone heard of biophilia? That humans have an innate relationship, a healthy relationship with nature. They want you to address that, and here's a number of different ways, some of the things you can use. Colors, shapes, patterns. Even the wallpaper with a natural pattern is better than a harsh something. Carpets. Materials. This is proving to be the most challenging pedal for all the guys taking on these living buildings. They've developed a red list of things that you just don't use. And the problem with that red list is we use them all the time. There's a few of them, you can read them, you kind of get down to these things. Some of them you might be familiar with. Every single wire in your house, electrical, low voltage, they're all covered in a thin strip of plastic that's full of that stuff, and you can't use it. Embodied carbon footprint, you need to buy carbon credits to offset the cost in carbon of your building. There's a couple of programs there that you can use, Athena. There's a responsible industry. We're, again, very slow on that one. We have one industry that's sort of taken up that challenge, and that is the timber industry. FSC certified wood, anyone heard of that? It's really great. It's the same price as regular wood, except we don't have any here. Appropriate sourcing. LEED has this too. You want to get your materials from as close as possible. As an architect, I've always strived for making, my buildings feel like they're local. Conservation, we got to get better at designing for end of life. Let's start building our buildings with pieces that can be taken apart and reused easily. Equity is kind of the social parts of this. Human scale, democracy and social justice. Accessibility everywhere. Again, we're working towards that now. It's rights to nature. You can't stop, you can't prevent someone else from, he builds a beautiful living building, then you build a big thing that shadows all his sun. You've got to be aware of what's going on around here. You can't affect someone's fresh air, you can't affect their sunlight, their water system. And I think lastly, beauty. They have a way of measuring this, it's kind of neat. They said, if you're building, solely for human delight, if your building will actually make someone cry, you get full credit. If it's that beautiful that people love it. And finally, the last imperative is education. You've got to share your ideas. If I find a way to keep my building warm using broccoli and carrots, I can't patent that and make millions off of it. It needs to be out there for the rest of the world. And again, your buildings need to be like classrooms. You walk into them, there should be posters up. In order to promote the Living Building Challenge, the guys down in Oregon, where this is all centered, said, well, let's do an international design competition. And we'll challenge people to redesign the place where they live. That was as simple as it was, the place where you live, to the standards of the Living Building Challenge. This is where everyone lived. Now, we weren't stopping people from living outside of them, but this is where the services were. This is what the regional growth strategy says we need for 89,000 people. That's what their plan should look like, but it didn't. It came out looking like the pedal, the human scale. Let's make everything walkable. And then use this red line as sort of a core transit line so that you never have to walk more than a quarter mile to get to a transit line that would get you to the place you wanted to go. A square mile city, and I think we had to actually go just a little bit bigger to a mile and a half. This black dotted purple line, that's our local, rapid, frequent transit system. 5-minute wait maximum in both directions. You're looking at the red zone is the highest density, mixed use, maximum 4 stories in height. You're in the orange zone, that's kind of another mixed use, up to sort of 3 stories, a little bit less dense. And then right through into the yellow, which is single family character housing. There we go. We took the rail line that we have to about here, extended it through up into the breadbasket of the Comox Valley, right into the farmland up on the north side, so that we could actually load those cars up, bring them in. There's our public market, right by the train line. This could be used to actually take our excess produce down island, also for passenger transit. So that we needed to find roads to start doing that, because in the competition you had to show before and after of what that. Now you can see we still have 2 lanes for vehicles, but the buses share them, so that's going to upset the vehicle people, but there's not going to be that many vehicle people. Dedicated bike lanes, they have to be nice. They're all got solar panels everywhere you can put them. Big wide sidewalks, lots of places to sit. There's the white painted on the stone. It's all pavers, so any water that hits these surfaces will be encouraged to get back down into the ground. We took Cliff and turned it into that. You're not allowed to own access to nature. So nobody lives on that outside street and then has their backyard on nature, because we said let's let them build up fairly high too, so that you see this little bridge here and this little bridge there. This is actually one of our stormwater systems that's kind of replicating nature with the little streams running out of the main center everywhere. And our geological history led us to believe that Courtenay would have been full of those streams too. And he said, why don't we come up with another network? We'll take this street and we'll actually turn it into a green street. To solve the problem of all that sewer pipe that we can't afford to be putting in the ground.